Welcome to Sideline Judgment. My name is Sergio.
My name is Tyler.
And today, Tyler, is our Gators review episode. We're going to talk all about what happened in the 2019 football season, talk about what we want to happen and what we think will happen in the 2020 season. And then, as always, we'll finish with our patented tweets we've shared. But, Tyler, we begin this episode on a very, very sad note. Today is Wednesday, January 29th. It is 3 days, just over 72 hours after the tragic death of Kobe Bryant, his daughter Gianna, and 7 other people in a helicopter crash in Calabasas, California. They were heading to Kobe Bryant's basketball institution that he has to play a travel basketball game that his daughter is a member of, the team was a member of. He was 41 years old. He is 4th all-time in the NBA points. He has shot the most. He has made the most shots in NBA history. He's also missed the most shots in NBA history.
Kind of comes with the territory.
If that's not a Kobe stat, I don't know what is. 5-time NBA champion, 1-time NBA All-Star, I believe 4-time All-Star Game MVP, a 3-peat winner with Shaq, built the Staples Center, and an influencer and icon to people of our generation, the generation above us, and the generation before us. Both of us haven't really had a moment to really talk this out. And I know this is a college football podcast, but some things transcend boundaries.
Yeah.
Tyler, in an very un-Kobe-like thing to do, I'm just going to pass you the ball and see if there's anything you want to really get off your chest.
I think that it was just the suddenness of this is something that you don't expect with anything, because it's just like it. I remember where I was. I was sitting at lunch, just scrolling through my phone, and you see the first report that he died. But it wasn't even like he's been hospitalized or there's a crash, he's in critical condition. The moment we knew about the helicopter crash is basically the moment they were telling us that no one who was in it survived. And we do want to give our thoughts and prayers to not only Kobe and his daughter, but all the other members of the helicopter ride that were affected, that passed away and were affected, all their families. But it's just a very shocking thing. And it's just hard to comprehend because it really was so sudden. We go all over the whole, it just is it reminds you to enjoy every moment, and the whole life is precious, and that is completely true, and that is something that should be taken away from this. But it's just very sobering to be reminded, to not even have a moment to prepare.
Right.
Because I've been fortunate with many of the deaths that I've had to deal with in my life of loved ones, in that, in a way, it sucks to know somebody is close to death, but in a very small way, it helps you prepare yourself for what's coming. And we didn't get that with this.
Right.
And it's tragic doesn't even really describe it, because Kobe is an icon that just so many people, to our generation in particular, he reached a status that very few get to. He got the one name status.
Yeah.
You just say Kobe. There's no okay, what Kobe are you talking about?
No.
There is only one Kobe, and then just there's the whole crumpling up the paper and throwing it in the trash can and just yelling Kobe. That is something that we all do, and we've done instinctively for years, and I certainly don't intend to stop at any time, but that's one of those things where you never expected Kobe to go away. You expected him to live forever. And it's a dangerous thing to do with celebrities and people that you admire. But for him, I don't know, it just really felt like that, because he was kind of just a monolith.
Yeah, Kobe kind of felt immortal. Kobe was
and in a lot of ways he is, but
yeah, right.
But Kobe is what Kobe stands for but him, the person. It felt that way.
And it was really nice to see him come back into the fold of the sports world, because, I mean, there's very few moments that I remember exactly where I was in my life, but I just think that's because we're in our early 20s and we're
Yeah.
we haven't lived through as much. But off the bat, two of those moments are Kobe related. Unfortunately, his death this past Sunday and his 60-point game. I was in rehearsal at the SOTD. We got out early. Um, and it was in April. It was in mid-April, and it was like a rehearsal for like a class performance that we had. And I got out like at 9ish or something, and I looked at my group text with my best friends, and it said, "Yo, Kobe's got 28 going into halftime. Yo, Kobe's got 31. Hey, Kobe's got 38. Yo, Kobe's got 40." And it was like, "Oh shoot, I got to get to a TV." I ran home. I lived in Springs. I ran home, or I took the bus home or whatever, and I get in, I open my laptop, and I remember distinctly I still had to eat, so I was walking in the kitchen eating dinner, and I had the laptop open, and I was just going about my like nightly routine: eat, brush your teeth. I held off on taking a shower because Kobe was going off. I wasn't gonna miss it. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? There's
Yeah.
very few moments and very few people that make you just kind of stop and say, no matter what happens for the rest of my life, I have this moment. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I have this here. Um, and I think what's really interesting, and a lot of what ESPN and Fox and all of these news organizations are really focusing on, and I'm very glad that they are, is his life after basketball. It's his relationship with his daughters. It's his determination and striving to be a family man first. It's his support of the women's game. It's the
Hmm.
fact that he was a person that he was in the news last week. Someone said Kobe says that this, and this WNBA player would be ready to play in the NBA right now. And there were always kind of like, there's always two sides to that where people were saying, "Oh, wow, are they really good enough?" And then there's the side of people saying, "Well, Kobe shouldn't say that. He shouldn't have to justify it because those girls are, or those women, I apologize, are just as good and should be able to be in the NBA." And there's truth and validity to both of those statements, but it's the fact that Kobe was putting his already well sealed reputation on the line for something as what seems meaningless, but in actuality carries a lot of weight to it, as just answering a question about who he thinks could make the jump from the WNBA to the NBA. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
The fact that his one comment can carry so far, and the fact that he's willing to put his neck out there for the women's game. He was repeatedly seen at UConn games, LA Sparks games, repeatedly hosting WNBA players and famous college players, hosting the workouts, just
I
really
mean,
being an ambassador for that.
and just like even a couple weeks ago, there was the meme of him talking to his daughter
Mm-hmm.
at a basketball game,
Yeah,
trying to explain something to her, and then she finished, and you can even watch their lips. Like she
yeah,
finishes his sentence,
yeah,
and he just gives her that look, like, "Yes, you're
yes.
getting it."
He's like, "You get it, you get it."
Yeah, and it was Gianna, and
Yeah,
it's very that's another one of those things that just feels so larger than life, so disconnected, and
mm-hmm.
now this is just a reminder that it is connected, and that this is a very tragic thing. I'm praying very heavily for the rest of his family, for
Mm-hmm.
everybody that's affected.
Yeah,
Um, but it kind of just goes to show that one day, for all of us, one day each one of us is just all will be is a memory, and it is our job to be a good one.
very well said, Tyler.
Yeah.
It's very well said. I want to close this part of the pod before we go into um, one other section and quick hits, and then our Gators talk. Today I was at lunch, and one of my duties at work is to be like the lunch monitor for my fourth graders. And one of my fourth grade girls is just a sports nut. I mean, Tyler, I'm talking like you and I at that age, just like absorbing every sport possible. Um, she's a big Boston sports fan. Her dad's from Boston. Big Celtics fan, big Red Sox fan. Because like me, lifelong Red Sox fan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course, yeah. I have hat hair right now because I wore my Sox hat today. Uh,
Like
and
me, lifelong Fulham supporter.
oh, of course, yes. Come on, Fulham till we die. No, and unfortunately, lifelong Patriots fan. But we were talking about the Celtics because the Heat played the Celtics last night. Whatever, da 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 da. And I had a napkin, and I cleaned up the napkin, and just instinctively, like we all do, I took the napkin, I cleaned up what I was doing, I crumpled it up. There was a trash can next to it. I hit a jab step, and I went Kobe, and it went in. And this student looked at me and said, "No, no, Mr. D, you can't say Kobe." I said, "Actually, no. I feel like I want to say Kobe more often now because they all know what happened and stuff. They're old enough to
Yeah.
realize." And she goes, "No, you can't say Kobe. You have to say for Kobe." And I lost it. I was like, "Oof." I was like,
That's
"You're right.
tough.
You are very, very, very right." And I gave her a hug, and she gave me a hug, and we went about our day. But it was a very beautiful moment that magnifies his impact and his reach.
Hmm.
And
And the legacy that he has.
exactly. And she's going to be an athlete in something, whether she plays football, whether she plays basketball, soccer, she plays everything. And it's because of people like Kobe advocating for the women's game, being advocates for female sports, women's sports, that, hopefully when she grows up, it'll have grown and progressed even further. So, very full circle.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, Kobe, Gigi, all the 7 other victims, and all of their families and everyone involved.
I hate to be cheeky and everything, but there's some solace is that the universe couldn't send them both off to the afterlife. Couldn't send one of them off to the afterlife. They had to send them both so they could hoop together.
Well, my mom said they're soulmates. She saw a picture of them and she goes, "Oh, they're soulmates." And you always think of a soulmate as someone you're going to marry or your life partner.
But it's more than that.
No, but it gave me solace that your soulmate could be your offspring, your child.
Mm-hmm.
A very beautiful moment. All right, Tyler, let's go ahead and move forward from Kobe. Let's get into college football. The one quick hits college football related that we have, Bo Pelini. Bo Pelini, former Nebraska head football coach, the man that they ran out after never losing less than 9 games in a season.
Well, never winning less than 9 games.
I'm sorry, never winning.
You said never losing. I'm like,
sorry.
I'd run a coach out of town for that.
No. Never winning less than 9 games in a season. He was recently the head football coach at FCS level, Youngstown State, the Penguins. The Penguins.
Oh, nice.
He is heading down to the Bayou to become LSU's new defensive coordinator. Tyler, what do we think about this move?
Well, it's definitely not an upgrade over Dave Aranda, but there are very few things that are an upgrade over Dave Aranda
exactly.
from defensive coordinator level. Yeah. This is fine. I mean, I don't. Honest to God, can I confess something here?
Tyler, I like to think that being in over 100 episodes of Sideline Judgment, that you've been confessing for hours upon hours of content that we've created. But sure, Tyler, go ahead and confess.
No, I'll confess to this. It scares me how many times I straight up forget that Bo Pelini is still alive. He's not like old or anything. It's just that it's like he was the Nebraska head coach and then he got fired. And that was the last we ever heard of him
because he never took a coordinator job at the FBS level. When you go down to FCS, and this is no disrespect to FCS, but there's so much going on in FBS that I don't pay attention to FCS until maybe like the quarterfinals of the playoff tournament. And if you don't make it there, I don't know who you are. Sorry.
No, I mean, you're exactly right. And that was the thing where good for him. Mm-hmm. I don't know a lot about Bo Pelini as a strategist or a defensive coordinator. I know he's a defensive mind. I'm sure with all the talent that they have, they'll be fine. Mm-hmm. I will say he'll probably parlay this, if it's successful, into getting a head coaching gig. Yeah. This LSU, this is just kind of, I don't know how he is as a defensive coordinator, but this is just kind of furthering the whole, like, with Dave Aranda leaving and all the players that they lost and all, like, both the coordinators leaving. Mm-hmm. Although technically Steve Ensminger was the coordinator, but that's not important. Mm-hmm. So many players leaving. It's just going to be a rebuilding year for LSU.
I think so. Listen,
rebuilding year is probably 8 wins.
I was going to say, if they win 10 games, I'll be like, wow, okay, that's incredible. But I don't expect them to win less than 8 or 9. Let's be realistic. Yeah. They have talent on the team.
You're right.
I just want to say this right here, right now. Tyler, January 29th, 2020, mark it down. Bo Pelini, the next head football coach at the University of Kentucky.
Huh.
Oh, I went there, baby.
I like that a lot.
Can I tell you why?
Why?
Because Mark Stoops, the next head football coach at the University of Miami. Oh, I'm blowing your mind today. I'm
Oh
coming
my
out
god,
swinging.
I love it.
I'm
I
telling you,
love it.
to me it makes sense. I don't think Manny Diaz is going to salvage the situation in Miami. They're going to need a hard
He's
reset.
dug a hole so deep.
He's dug a
Like
hole so deep, and Mark Stoops is gonna once again do his voodoo magic in Lexington for another year, maybe two max. I'm thinking it happens after next season because just we've seen the speed of the coaching
these
carousel,
hirings and these firings,
so
like
I don't really see it being a real crazy possibility.
yeah. And
So
his whole thing, the reason that he turned down Florida State, was that Florida State basically told him like, well, we like you and we'd love to hire you, but we're gonna interview a couple other people. Like they basically were like, you're our safety option,
right,
which good safety option to have.
yeah, phenomenal safety option.
I would argue they should have just hired him.
Me too. I
he's,
agree.
he's like, I'm comfortable where I am. I don't need this.
Yeah.
Like, and he took himself out of contention, and because he's got a good thing going at Kentucky, and he's also at one of those situations where he can wait for the right job to open up because he beat Florida. He's won 10 games. Mm-hmm. He freaking pulled a miracle out of his ass this season.
Yeah. And not just a specific game, like the season was the
miracle.
Whole
season. He could lose out. Well, okay, I don't want to go that far.
Relax.
But he might not ever win 10 games again. He might not ever beat Florida again while he's there. They're already making a statue of him.
Yeah, I'd have to agree.
Well, I mean, like literally just for beating Florida.
Yeah. Listen,
I hate to give ourselves that much credit, but like.
Well, I mean, after 31 years, I'm sorry.
31 years.
The 31 years, it be like that sometimes. So just wanted to point that out there. Bo Pelini, next head coach of Kentucky after Mark Stoops leaves for the Miami job. I'm just saying. Now, would I like that as a Florida fan? Absolutely not. But I think it is what it is. It's a reality. So, or it's not a reality. I hope it becomes a reality.
He'd be the type. He would be a good coach to take over.
I think so. He would fit
for what Mark Stoops has built.
All right. Well, forget about all those other Florida schools. Let's go down into it, Tyler. Let's talk about our Gators right here.
Yeah. For all of you that don't care about the Florida Gators, first of all, why are you listening to this?
First of all, for those of you who don't want to listen to this has been another episode of Sideline Judgment. My name is Sergio.
My name is Tyler.
We're not biased, but go Gators. Awesome. Let's get into this episode. The in-season review, Tyler. I love what you put as the first thing on the rundown. Expectations versus reality. And let me tell you, this is one of the few seasons that we can say expectations met reality.
Yes and no.
Oh, man. Go ahead.
It's just, I say for the road to get there.
Oh, it ain't about the journey, baby. It's the outcome.
Okay, all right, okay. That's very Kobe of you.
At the end of the day,
ignore the process. Traitor.
Listen, no, but tell me why, because I think expectations, we talked about at the beginning of the year, this team has to take a step forward. And when you we said it, going from 4 wins to 10 wins is difficult. But you know what's harder? Going from 10 to 11 wins. And we did it. We went from 10 to 11 wins.
I argue that there's a duality. In a lot of ways, it was exactly what we expected. Mm-hmm. The result was, and I think that's extremely important. When I just say the expectation, it's just that the way that this season played out, the road to get there was so different from what I imagined that it would.
Agreed.
And I even said in the preseason, I picked them to win the East, which they were so close to doing. So I'm not gonna. I think it was still a good season.
I'm still not over the Georgia game. Let's move on.
Okay, we'll talk about that later.
We'll talk about it later.
But it's like I expected, like I even said, I was like, this is the team that's going to get up for the big games. They'll probably win those, but then they might get upset by a smaller team somewhere along the line. Because I was like, this team is not going to go undefeated. Like, it's just so incredibly hard to do that.
No Gator team has ever gone undefeated.
Nope.
Let the record show.
Yeah.
I know you're sad about that. I'm sorry.
You got to ruin my mood with that, man. But no. But that was not what this team was at all. Their only 2 losses were to the 2 division winners in the SEC, in both in close games away from home.
Right.
And Kyle Trask taking over, the offensive line never gelling.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I think if you gave me the result of this season, I think
that's exactly what we were expecting.
I think it's like what we were expecting. But if you gave me the process without the result and said, what is the end result? Given if this happens, what's the result? Meaning if Trask goes down, if Franks goes down halfway through the Kentucky game, and you're losing, what happens if the offensive line actually never develops? What happens if the running game never materializes? What happens? Like if Jabari Zuniga and Jonathan Grenard go out for multiple games and are basically absent for our most important games, what happens? I wouldn't have told you we win 11 games.
I wouldn't have either.
I would have expected a 7 or 8 win season.
Testament to Dan Mullen's coaching ability.
Agreed.
To overcome everything that happened this season. And this truly was a progression in the state of the program. Because it would be so easy to win 10 games last season and not follow that up.
Right.
But I really felt like this is probably one of the best Gator teams we've seen in the last couple of years.
Yeah,
like
not the most talented, but one of the best that played.
The best team.
Yeah.
And it's better than all the MAC teams. It was better than
most
you
of
could
the
debate
MAC
that you could debate that it was better than if it was better or not than the 2012 Muschamp team.
We can debate
those
that
are
later.
just very different seasons and very. It's not worth a chance to debate.
Arguably the best team since the 08 title.
I would say so.
Yeah, arguably.
Most balanced is in a different SEC now than they've existed back then.
Right.
But I think that, in some ways, it's like this team accomplished exactly what we expected and hoped that they would in regards to taking that step, making that progression, getting me so excited for next year and for the years to come, the trajectory of the program.
Right.
But also, it even kind of surpassed those expectations because of the unorthodox way it got there.
Yeah, I think the unorthodox way that we got there has to do with just how we look at the season in retrospect. Because at the beginning of the season, none of us expected Felipe Franks to break his ankle and to be out for the season and then transfer. Like, this gives us a completely different path than what we thought we was going to be at the beginning of the year. We were talking about Franks having a developmental season. Growing from a developmental season, going into that second-year Mullen season that we talked about over and over in the offseason, and then essentially using those weapons. The offensive line was supposed to get better. Everything was supposed to happen. We were expecting to be in Atlanta. We had expectations to be in Atlanta. Now, granted, those were not met, but the expectations of the season as a whole definitely were met.
I'm happy with this season.
I am happy with the season.
I'm not as happy as I could have been.
Mm-hmm.
That's most football seasons.
Right.
But I'm happy with this season for more than anything is that it showed real growth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you're looking for.
And I was reading something about how all those injuries on the defensive side of the ball actually, they're not a blessing in disguise because it's never a blessing for a player to get injured, but they have prepared us in terms of depth for next season, right? We lose C.J. Henderson, we lose Jonathan Grenard, we lose Jabari Zuniga. These are players that were core parts of our defense. Because of their injuries, players were able to come in and play more, meaning that now next season when those players are expected to be the starters and to be the role models and the leaders in that locker room, they will be able to live up to the hype.
Yeah, because it's increasing that depth.
Exactly. Injuries increase depth. It's unfortunate, but it's kind of a silver lining when you look at it. Yeah. And
what's helped with that is that Florida didn't lose any assistants this offseason.
Thankfully.
Continuity is there. And not saying not having continuity would have derailed all that progress, because I don't think it would have, but it would have made it a little bit more difficult. But now they're playing in the same defense. They're young players. And I'm very excited for the look of this team because especially with recruiting turning upward under Mullen, he's especially signed a lot of talent to the defensive side of the football.
Yeah, which is important because if you're going to advertise yourself as DBU, then part of the whole sell is that we're going to get the best defensive backs in the country. They're going to play early, and these guys are going to leave after 3 years. So if you do that, you have to consistently recruit at a high level on the defensive side of the ball. It's just a fact of the modern college football world. It is what it is.
Yeah. And I would argue, I've seen the argument that for recruiting-wise, it's just like he can't recruit his own side of the ball as well as they are recruiting defense. Dan Mullen, we're talking about here. And I would argue, wouldn't you want more talent on the side of the ball that you're not the expert in?
Right.
So you're like, they'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And I'm also thinking, since offenses set the pace,
right,
and it is important to have talented players on offense, and Florida is not lacking for talented players.
No.
But it's a matter of the offense gets to set the term of what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So you can be Hunter Renfrow, like you were a 3-star and you're a slot receiver, but you know how to get open, and they don't know what's coming, and then you can just get open.
Right.
The defense, a lot of it is about speed, athleticism, because you are reacting constantly.
There's a lot more intangibles on the defensive side of the ball than there are.
So I feel personally that recruiting rankings matter more on the defensive side than on the offensive side.
Right.
Because I think coaching matters more, like scheming matters more on the offensive side. And I can be very wrong about this because I am not a football coach.
Right.
But that is my personal belief.
Now, the one position on the offensive side of the football that I have unequivocal, complete faith in Dan Mullen is the quarterback position. Now, this is a situation that we, going into the season, had one opinion, and coming out of the season, you would think World War III was happening on Twitter. With I shouldn't make that joke because the first day of the year was World War III jokes on Twitter, so let's not even go there. But no. But the Gator fan base is divided completely.
It's at civil war.
We're at civil war. We really are. This is Iron Man and Captain
America. I don't
America.
understand why.
This is Iron Man and Captain America. You're welcome for the reference. Now,
thanks, buddy.
God, I love you so. So we have on one side Kyle Trask, rising redshirt senior, who, for the first time since he was a freshman in high school, ladies and gentlemen, is a starting quarterback for a football team. He takes over in the third game of the season, in the third quarter, after Felipe Franks goes down, breaks his ankle. It's a bad injury. Trask comes in, leads us from a 13-point deficit, wins the football game, wins the starting job, moves forward. On the other side of the ball, you have rising redshirt sophomore, Emory Jones, who is much more of a dual threat quarterback.
Much better athlete.
Much better athlete, exactly. We saw him quite a bit this season. Mullen would use some packages to bring him in, sometimes to a detriment where it would be a change of pace. And I know I was calling for Mullen to use Emory Jones throwing the football within those packages, simply because if you only bring him in to run the football, defenses can just put 8 or 9 guys in the box, and that's it. You know what I mean? You have to leave the threat of throwing the football with a guy like Emory, who, as shown in the bowl game, as shown in the last few games of the season when he was on the field a little bit more, can throw the football. Like, it's not like he can't.
Yeah.
He threw I think it was 3 touchdowns against Florida State in the second half, in the last 3 quarters. Like, he can throw the football. You know what I mean? So we have those 2 guys. These are the 2 guys. The question here is twofold. Number 1, Tyler. What do you think the quarterback situation should be? And then number 2, forget all of that. What will Dan Mullen do? Which is ultimately what matters. What will Dan Mullen do going forward?
What I think it should be is a matter of, like, it's going to be a competition. But and I think you need to keep it an open competition, because it was like you go into the season. You're 2.5 games in. Your starting quarterback goes out with injury. You're down. You have to just throw out all the running plays.
Yeah.
Like, we're just going passing for this game. And then you sit down. I imagine Dan Mullen sits down in his office and is like, "Here's the notebook that we made of our plan for how we're going to do the offense this season. Throw that bitch out the window."
Yeah. Put it back up on the shelf.
Yeah, to put it back. Like, we'll come back to it later. But because you just have to be scrap it. And what I say to the use of Emory Jones a lot is that, in fairness to Dan Mullen, he didn't go into the season thinking he was going to have to Tim Tebow, Chris Leak this thing.
Correct.
Because Felipe Franks was mobile enough to not need to be he could run the running plays.
There's a reason that he was the starter over Kyle Trask, and it's because he was a more mobile quarterback than Kyle Trask. Yeah. And the way that he runs his offense, that style of quarterback is more efficient.
Which is the primary reason people are saying that Emory Jones. So some people are saying that Emory Jones should start, because Emory Jones is a much more mobile quarterback, and that opens up more for Dan Mullen's offense, which I'm not disagreeing with.
Right.
I want to preface what I'm about to say with, I think both of these quarterbacks are going to be really good.
I agree. I agree. I think all 3 quarterbacks on the roster are going to be good, but that's another conversation.
What I think should happen, what I think will happen, are kind of the same. What I think should happen is that Dan Mullen should open it up for competition in the spring, just because this wasn't I selected a starter. It was, all right, we're throwing the game plan aside. Kyle, you're the starter, and Emory, because you're obviously not as old as him,
Mm-hmm.
and you've only been here like a year. Like, we'll try to work you in.
Right.
And now you actually have a full off season to be like, all right, who should be the starter?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I personally think that it should be Kyle Trask without a doubt.
Mm-hmm.
But more than anything, just because Kyle Trask has proven how good of a passer he is,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion.
See, I don't know.
Go ahead.
I don't know if it's without a doubt. I agree with you that Kyle Trask should be the starter. Tyler, you gave me a look like we've been on the same page for so long, and you're giving me this. No. Hear me out.
No. I'm interested. No, I'm interested. I want to hear.
I think Kyle Trask should be the starter for multiple reasons. Number one, I think from an emotional aspect, this man's literally waited 7 years for this shot. And I'm not saying that we should give it to him because it's an emotional plea. I'm just saying that when you recruit a player, you don't recruit just the player, you recruit the person. And Trask is a holdover from the McElwain staff. But this man, when he came in, Mullen took him in as his own. Just like he took in LaMichael Pirine, just like he took in C.J. Henderson, just like he took in all these other guys. And I think there is something to be said with how a player responds in a situation. I am perfectly calm with Kyle Trask under 2 minutes. He's shown it to me. Those intangible, what Raul and I call Peyton Manning moments. Those moments where in the final 2 minutes of a game, I am 100% sure that this player can get me to where I need to be. At the collegiate level, I am feeling that way with Kyle Trask. Number one. Number two, I think Kyle Trask not only proved themselves to be worthy, but he surprised a lot of us in the local and in the national media. Like, this is a player that we're looking at now as being a top 10 quarterback in college football. This was nowhere near anybody's radar a year from now. This was nowhere near anybody's radar 6 months ago. You know what I mean? This is something that is very brand new, very fresh. Yes, granted, it's the hot commodity. Number three, we've talked about this before. You've said it. I've said it. Dan Mullen does not just change quarterbacks.
So that was what I was going to mention. That I was like, what will Dan Mullen do? I know what he's going to do.
Mm-hmm. He's loyal to.
He's not gonna bench Kyle Trask unless Emory Jones outplays him to a level that is unseen. Like, because Dan Mullen just does not bench his quarterbacks.
No, listen. Tim Tebow was good enough to be the starter from day one. From the first day he got to U.S. campus. But what did he do? He ran it with Chris Leak because he was a senior and was the guy that was there. He trusts his quarterbacks. He is loyal to the person in that position. It takes something astronomical like a Felipe Franks broken ankle for the player behind him to get a shot. And there's another reason for when we preach, and I mean we as in the sports community, we preach a lot where if you get your shot, you better not mess it up. You better take full advantage of your opportunity. And Kyle Trask did exactly that. Took full advantage of his opportunity. Now, was Emory Jones set up in the same level to succeed this season? Of course not. But that's because he was the backup quarterback. He's lucky he got some packages to begin with, because not many backup quarterbacks do that. Like, the fact that this is a conversation is a testament to Emory Jones' talent.
Yes.
You know?
And I think that, well, more than anything, I think that one thing I would just tell Emory Jones is that we have had one season in the last 11 years. Florida has had one season in the last 11 years where they have only started one quarterback the entire season. A lot of that is due to them being terrible.
Wow.
But
now you made me sad.
But the other is injury. Yeah. And you know the funny part of it? The only one season where there was the same starting quarterback for all 13 games was Felipe Franks in 2018 because of an injury to Kyle Trask, because Kyle Trask probably would have started the South Carolina game.
That's very true.
So, I mean, look at what happened this last season. You literally cannot see it coming, and then players get injured. It's part of football. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, obviously I'd be like, well, it doesn't look like Emory Jones is going to transfer.
No.
And I don't know why he would. We talked about it before. He'd have to sit out a place. And even if you're not playing, there's nowhere you're going to get more developed than here in Florida under Dan Mullen.
Agreed. We talked about his dad's Facebook post where he basically talked about all of that.
Yeah,
he basically brought it up.
Why would we leave?
Yeah, it makes no sense.
But even more than that, it's just like there's but there is a chance that exactly what happened to Felipe Franks is going to happen to Kyle Trask.
Mm-hmm. We hope not.
Trask in the Auburn game. We hope. I hope nobody gets injured. But
no, I don't.
Kyle Trask in the Auburn game got Marlon Davidson got thrown into his knee. Mm-hmm. And we were there for this, and then he got sent to the locker room.
He sat out. He didn't play the last 4 minutes of the first quarter, or the first half.
Yeah. And we're sitting there, and we're like, all right, well, we got one scholarship quarterback for the rest of the season. Mm-hmm. And and luckily it was just a sprain,
Wow.
an MCL sprain. Kyle Trask was fine, but just look at like that 30 minutes of real life.
Yeah.
How quickly things can change.
I forgot
how quickly I was like, all right, well, this could have been an 11-win team.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably an 8-win team now.
And we had that conversation at halftime. Like, that was an actual conversation we had in the stadium at halftime.
So that's one of those things where, like, there's no shame in being the backup quarterback because you will likely play.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I think that Emory Jones has all the talent to win this competition. I just don't think, because nothing in Dan Mullen's career has shown me that he is going to bench Kyle Trask.
Yeah. I don't think so either.
And I just don't. I don't know. And Emory Jones could end up taking the starting job if Kyle Trask gets injured or just his play drops off the face of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see any of those things. I don't see the second thing happening under Dan Mullen.
Neither do I.
So I think Kyle Trask will be your quarterback next season, barring an injury. Yeah. I personally don't have a problem with either of these quarterbacks being.
Neither do I. Like, if coming out of summer camp, we see that, hey, listen, Emory's like not miles, but like, just better than Trask and stuff. Fine, start Emory. I'm perfectly fine with it. But I think it's safe to say that sideline judgment believes that Kyle Trask will be the starting quarterback to start off the 2020 season.
Yeah.
All right, Tyler, let's talk about other parts of the offense. We mentioned how this year was very underwhelming with the offensive line. The run game was just non-existent. Apart from a couple big runs from the Michael Pirine, the run game was non-existent. And the real story here was just our senior wide receivers just doing everything at all times.
This entire offense was, in a lot of ways, carried across the back of the wide receiver room.
Yeah. And honestly, and also, I know he's just a rising junior. Kyle Pitts.
That man.
Kyle Pitts did the thing. And the thing was
good.
And the thing was
Kyle
being
Pitts
a
is
great
tight end one next year. Kyle Pitts is tight end one for next year.
Kyle Pitts was tight end one this year.
You mean you're not wrong, but like
Kyle Pitts was snubbed for the tight end award.
Should Kyle Pitts sit out his junior season?
Is it worth it for him?
No. And Kyle Pitts and as a tight end and the wide receiver core of Van Jefferson, Tyree Cleveland, Freddie Swain, Josh Hammond, Kadarius Toney for like a.
Those were just the seniors, by the way.
Yeah, those were all just the seniors.
Yeah.
Kadarius Toney, Trayvon Grimes, and Jacob Copeland are all back, including Kyle Pitts is coming back next year. Yep. They're probably the most dangerous of all of these players.
Yep.
The biggest matchup nightmare, and that's not to mention any freshmen. It was really funny. Very few, I feel like any freshman wide receivers, like true freshman wide receivers, got a snap this year because you have a 7-deep wide receiver room.
Yeah. And
all of them got the ball.
Listen, it's just another testament, and we've said it over, and we will continue to say it. It's just a testament to Dan Mullen being an offensive genius, understanding his strengths and really just going towards it.
And it's very interesting because Dan Mullen in his time, as much as he's a quarterback developer, and he has admitted this, and this is kind of what I love about him. He is a quarterback developer. That is his bread and butter. But he loves to run the football.
Yeah.
I get it because when you're playing NCAA football and for some reason your team's running game is working, there's almost nothing more satisfying than just running it down people's throat.
Yeah,
and being like, you can't stop.
I completely get it.
And his offenses, especially at Mississippi State, were known mostly for being spread option attacks, mostly attacking through the ground because they didn't have the elite athletes out on the perimeter because you couldn't really get them at Mississippi State.
Right.
And at Florida, he's able to get closer to that. And it just shows that he can shift his focus from the ground game, from a balanced attack, to a very pass-happy attack. Today, I'll admit it, I watched every single offensive snap of this football team.
Nice. I wish I had the time to do that today.
From the Miami, I made time. From the Miami game all the way to the Virginia game. And it's very interesting to see the progression of the offense. And there was a quote from Dan Mullen that I think you can definitely see the through line of. It was a quote from Dan Mullen, I think, at one point in the season where they asked him, like, how do you feel about abandoning the run game? And he's like, we don't abandon the run game. We just don't worry about establishing it anymore.
Dan, that's the same thing.
I mean, yeah, but it's just like we could always go back to running the football, but it's just like we're not even worrying about like setting the tone or setting a presence.
He's like
can see a switch in that in the Auburn game. Because in the Auburn game, you're going up against a talented defensive line.
Mm-hmm. And you got to get the ball out of your hands really quickly.
Yeah, so it's like you kind of have to focus on your passing game.
Well, the whole thing in the Auburn game was, let's get our fast receivers on these slower linebackers in quick slants, and you saw
both of Kyle Trask's touchdowns were on linebackers.
Well, in the first possession, I think it was the third play of the game. Freddie Swain,
the second play of the game.
Second play of the game. Freddie Swain gets hit on a quick 3-step slant route and then takes it 60 yards.
Yep. And so that was the game plan, because it had to be the game plan for that game. And pretty much after that point, they were just like, all right, well, the receivers are the strength of this team. Kyle Trask is the strength of this team. So we're just going to do that.
Yeah.
And it sucks for LaMichael Pirine for coming back for senior season to have not as good stats as the year before.
Right.
But he showed a lot as a pass catcher, as a pass protector, and in his versatility. And it's just it's very interesting watching the progression of the offense just changing drastically, and becoming less and less balanced in regards to run-to-pass ratio. However, those passes aren't all like 50 yards downfield. There's a lot of like extension of the run game screens and things like that. Right. So I mean, this is just all a gushing session about Dan Mullen.
But it's just true because, listen, we were deprived of a decent offense for so long that now, this is the second year that we were able to have that kind
I understand now that we're like older, out of college. We were in college for the first Dan Mullen year. When you see what good quarterback play is like for your team, you're kind of like, why would anyone settle for less than this?
I agree.
I sit back and I'm like, how did we deal with this for so long?
How did I deal with Treon Harris as my starter for a year and a half while I was in college? Like, I went to those games, Tyler. I paid money to attend a football game multiple times when Treon Harris was the starting quarterback of my team.
I mean,
you know the GIF where me getting ready to go. It's like me getting ready to go to a Gator game in 2015, and it's putting on the clown makeup. That's me. That's how I felt for a year and a half when Treon Harris was.
I was there for much of that. I know. So you got it, but
you got the first year of Mullen.
You're damn right it is. I remember telling people at the end of that season, like, you know what? I will take the roller coaster that was this 4 years of football for me. I envy the students now that only have Mullen as their coach.
I've only seen one Mullen game in the Swamp, and thankfully it was the Auburn game. All right, Tyler, let's talk about quickly for next season on the offense. What do we want to see? We talked about how we have graduated Van Jefferson, Tyree Cleveland, Joshua Hammond, and Freddie Swain. Also, we're not getting LaMichael Pirine, who sneaky Gator great, and I want to say sneaky Gator great because he just made the most of situations when his back was against the wall, and I just love that about him. We already talked about the quarterback position, so let's not even go there. Running backs. Ideally, Dameon Pierce is going to be the starter, right? He's a rising junior.
I would imagine he's the closest to the starter you'd get. I feel like it's going to go back to a running back room, a running back rotation,
right?
Because Michael Pirine was so clearly like the alpha among this year's running back group.
Yeah,
and then it did kind of become we didn't run an air raid offense, but it became that kind of Mike Leach-ish air raid where it's just like, just get you one running back that can like catch the ball.
Yeah.
And we'll just play him.
Ironically, even though this season wasn't the best season for Michael Pirine, it kind of upped his draft stock because it showed I can catch out of the backfield. I can block really well.
He didn't have as many carries.
We talk about longevity and the shelf life, so that's a good one.
Yeah, but I think that it's going to go back to being more like it was Mullen's first year when he had Scarlett and Pirine and Pierce.
Right.
Pierce is going to be the 1A. But I do think that if Malik Davis can stop fumbling,
yeah, boy.
And then I think if Lorenzo Lingard, the 5-star Miami transfer, is eligible, Iverson Clement and Naquan Wright are already on campus. Those are good players.
Listen,
there's a possibility for some freshman running backs. I think it's really going to be more of like a
running back by committee,
a multiple running back committee, like a 2 running back system. Sometimes I think a lot of that has to do with the offensive line, which
let's pivot. Let's pivot over to the offensive line. This past year was rough. And I think the biggest thing that we have to do is we have to replace Nick Buchanan at center, who was a redshirt senior, the leader of that offensive line. It looks like Brett Heggie is pegged to be that starter. He is a redshirt senior. He knows the playbook. We have essentially other options there, but it looks like everybody's kind of shifting over. Ethan White is projected to be the starter at right guard. He's a true sophomore. He's the one that got playing time this season. He's the one that came in at 380 pounds, I believe.
He lost like a human.
He lost yeah. There's a great article in The Athletic about him. If you subscribe to The Athletic, you should go in and listen or go in and read it. Where he came in at like 385, 390. He early enrolled, and from January when he started all the way to like November when he was really taking off and being put into the lineup, he lost like 85 pounds. He's at like 300, and he said he wants to get down. Like another like 10 or 15, so he can be like at a 285, like a muscular 285 for an offensive lineman. Like, it's looking good.
That's scary.
He was playing a ton at right guard in the Orange Bowl, so it's very interesting. He can play a lot of the positions on the line, so it's going to be an interesting thing. Right now, he's pegged at the starting right guard spot. At right tackle, we got Jean Delance, who's another redshirt senior. So there's leadership, but then again, it's a matter of, even though there was leadership last year, can we develop? Richard Gourej is going to be the left guard. We got time. We got some stuff to figure out.
Yeah, I think John Heves's got his work cut out for him this offseason.
Who is a great coach. Like,
he's a great offensive line coach.
This season not being where the offensive line couldn't really get it moving was an anomaly for his track record. Like,
yeah, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that, and coaches have said this, where they're like, usually at some of these play times, we would, you pull somebody out and put somebody else back in if they're not playing well. Mm-hmm. Like, we don't have the offensive linemen that are ready to do that.
Right.
And I think what I'm excited about this offseason is that there's more numbers on the offensive line. Because that was one of the staples of the MAC and the Muschamp era, is that they didn't really recruit well to offensive line, like the numbers that they needed. Mm-hmm. They didn't have enough trench players.
Right.
And Mullen saw the brunt of that this season. Mm-hmm. His first year, he had a very veteran offensive line that wasn't good, and then they got to be good.
Right.
And then now they have some continuity with some more players. They didn't have a good year last year, but under John Hevesy, I think that they can improve, and I think that now you have more of those freshmen and redshirt freshmen that have been in the system and are developed and are ready to compete. So I think the offensive line would be better. I just don't really see how it's worse.
It's seven freshman offensive linemen in this class.
Oof.
So that is depth that will be developed. They will get better as the year goes on.
It is important in the SEC to be good in the trenches. Dan Mullen even understood that even at Mississippi State. Mm-hmm. Like the team that he left behind for Joe Moorhead that had like the number one defense in the country had 2 first-round picks on the defensive line.
Yeah, it's important.
And like a second-round pick on the offensive line. Like, he understands the importance of the trenches. So I think with John Hevesy, they'll get there. So I'm a little excited to see that. And I am actually excited to see the wide receiver group as well. Mm-hmm.
That's what I was going to say. And that wide receiver group is led by seniors Trevon Grimes and Kadarius Toney. We know Kadarius Toney's an X factor. Trevon Grimes is a really, really good X wide receiver. He's got the size, he's got the speed, and he's got that determination. And I'm very happy. He could have declared it. He could have gone. But he decided to come back, really establish himself as our wide receiver 1 on this team. But don't forget, we got Jacob Copeland. Like we said, he's going to be a redshirt sophomore. Rick Wells is still here. Rick Wells was kind of pegged as the Brandon Powell. Moment of silence for the GOAT. Thank you very much. The
fishing legend.
Only real ones remember. If you know, you know. Brandon Powell threw the block for Antonio Callaway on the 4th and 14 that Will Greer threw him, and that's all I'll say on that. Most important player in that play. Continue, Sergio. Thank you, Sergio. Rick Wells, redshirt senior. Jamarcus Weston, redshirted this season. Deontay Marks, redshirted this season. Trent Whitemore, redshirted this season. Those are 3 freshmen, high-quality wide receivers that were in last year's class that have gotten an entire year of reps, that have gotten an entire year of development, of learning under players like Van Jefferson, players like Tyree Cleveland. And then we also got true freshmen, Javequan Frazier's, and then Xavier Henderson, C.J. Henderson's younger brother. They're going to be true freshmen this year, and true freshmen that might get some playing time. Maybe not something. And Tyler,
all of this,
we'd like to announce a new transfer to the University of Florida.
we have transfer you,
Mm.
5-star transfer you over here.
Yeah, boy.
Um, but not like Georgia where they transfer away. It's 5-star transfer you where they transfer in.
Exactly.
Justin Shorter, the former 5-star Penn State wide receiver,
Hmm.
announced he was transferring this last season and has selected and committed to the Florida Gators.
Yes, he has, baby.
And there's rumors that he might be able to get an immediate eligibility waiver.
Yes,
It's
there's
less certain than the Lorenzo Lingard case, which seems
correct.
pretty open and
Yeah.
shut because he had so many medical hardships.
For the
But
record with Lorenzo Lingard, his family does have a medical his family has medical issues, and he is from just north of Orlando, so it is moving closer to home. So there is this is the reason, this is the way that we got Trevon Grimes to play immediately. So there is a possibility that he could get that waiver. The stuff with Shorter is going to be a little more difficult. They're going to try to apply under the same the same waiver that was granted to Justin Fields when he transferred from Georgia to Ohio State. There were rumors that when Justin Fields left, it was because there were players that were using the N word and he felt uncomfortable there, and the NCAA kind of granted it. And there was recently the article in The Athletic about read The Athletic. I've mentioned it twice in 10 minutes. It's really good. Subscribe. They've mentioned it where there's a toxic culture and a culture of harassment and bullying, something that is not something that Penn State has tried to shed from its history. We all know about the Sandusky scandal and all that stuff, and the hazing and the harassment from different fraternities and universities at Penn State. And they're going to try to be applying under that kind of waiver. Now, that one is more difficult than the family medical hardship one that you were talking about, Tyler, but we'll have to see where it goes. If he does get granted the waiver, woo!
yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
No, I mean, I think that going into the offseason after the Virginia game, you sat there as a Florida fan or just analyzing the team, and you think, all right, we have the potential to lose 6 of our top 7 receivers.
Yeah.
And we lost the 4 seniors, but no one that could have declared early did.
And that's talking about Kadarius Toney and Trevon Grimes.
Yeah, and that's good because we need the continuity. Those players, I do feel, have something to gain from coming back.
Yes.
They're at least the alphas in a crowd. And the best case scenario for us, for Florida's offense, is that they are the alphas in a crowded room. Mm-hmm. Even if not, they are proven commodities. They are good players, and they will help transition to the next season, because that is one of the big things. That's what just happened to Georgia. Mm-hmm. Georgia lost a bunch of receivers, and it's an interesting factoid. Bill Connolly at ESPN, creator of the SP Plus matrix.
God bless him.
Yeah, so honestly, he found that there was a correlation specifically to returning receiving yards and offensive production the next year. Mm-hmm. And he flagged, like, when Georgia had like so few returning receiving yards, and like their offense is going to drop.
Yeah. Because
people don't think about it, because people think that wide receiver is a plug and play position.
It's not.
But a lot of it has to do with
chemistry.
Wide receivers have to understand chemistry. There's nuance, there's finesse, there's polish, there's route running, there's understanding the concepts, there's being able to see how you win. And part of the reason Florida was so successful this season is they had senior wide receivers or older wide receivers that had a good coaching and knew how to win in space. Mm-hmm. Specifically, we go back to Freddie Swain against the Auburn play. Yeah, he has speed, but part of the reason he was able to break away from the defenders is that he did the little high step. First of all, he ran a route to get him open against the linebacker, and then he did a little high step, splitting the defenders so that he could run right past them.
And it's the
coaching.
Details.
That is detail.
Yeah.
And that takes time. And then more than anything, like you said, it takes chemistry. Mm. So it's extremely important that Florida has receiving weapons coming back.
Yeah.
So that actually has got me really excited. That was something I was looking forward to being very worried about. And now I'm very excited about it.
Which is always a plus. Tyler, we talked a lot about the side of the ball that scores some points. Let's move on. Let's talk about the defensive side of the ball. This defense is graduating. Jabari Zuniga, Jonathan Grenard, David Reese, very important, underrated aspect there, and C.J. Henderson. We're losing very important dare I say, star players at each section of the defense. Let's talk about how this defense played this year. We had a little bit of trouble at the star position. We had a little bit of trouble in the nickel. A
Yeah.
certain friend of the pod, poor Bucks fan Tyler Renfro, was quite vocal about a certain player that is the third member of his family with that name. Let's talk about this, Tyler. What happened to the defense? Apart from Jabari and Jonathan Grenard being out with injuries, because I really do feel like that's the stuff that had the problems. Our worst performances were in the 2 games we lost, and they were against LSU and against Georgia. Georgia, I have zero idea what happened. Like, the experiment of Trey Dean at star is over, thankfully, because he's not a player that I think transitioned well to it. He played cornerback last season when Marco Wilson was out with his torn ACL. And it's a thing where we have to see where we're going moving forward. Jabari and Grenard are gone. What are we doing, Tyler? What happened in those Georgia and LSU games that we can learn from to fix the problems for next season?
I think Will Miles at Read and Reaction has done a good job of highlighting this, that in Grantham's defensive performances, at least in the last 2 years, what typically happens is that his defenses are good, and they only really truly struggle against NFL caliber quarterbacks.
Okay.
And this year, that includes Joe Burrow and Jake Fromm. And a lot of it was interesting because they lost we lost defensively in different ways. Mm-hmm. I think with LSU, it was a simple matter of, well, one, that's one of the greatest offenses we've ever seen. And a lot of it had to do with athleticism matchups, the inability to pressure Joe Burrow, which had a lot to do with not having John Grenard and Jabari Zuniga. Mm-hmm. And the inability, I think, to cover those wide receivers for prolonged periods of time, and those wide receivers opening up holes in the running game. But a lot of that, again, I really feel like had to do with Jabari Zuniga and John Grenard. Mm-hmm. Because Jabari Zuniga, on top of being a good pass rusher, is also a great run defender.
Yes.
And John Grenard is a fantastic pass rusher and additionally a leader, mm-hmm. which is one of the things that I am worried about with the defense, that him and Jabari Zuniga were leaders. Mm-hmm. And so was David Reese. They were leaders.
Mm-hmm. They were vocal.
But, yes. And so that was that situation. The Georgia situation is different because I feel that it was a conscious choice to not play man against Georgia's wide receivers that were very superior to Florida's defensive backs, in my opinion, mm-hmm. for the simple fact that if DeAndre Swift starts breaking off a run, it's harder to turn your back around when you're in man coverage and tackle him. Mm-hmm. Because you got to turn your back around from your guy. You got to figure out what's going on. And when you're in zone, or at least kind of playing off, you're allowed to react to running to the ball being run more often.
So you're saying that dropping into zone and dropping into a more a not press defense, keep it in front of you. We're able. So, but what we're doing basically was, rather than respect the wide receivers, we were respecting DeAndre Swift.
Yes, and that showed in the fact that he only had about 80 yards in the game. Mm-hmm. And with that one, I really feel, I hate to say this, that this is as simple as this, but I really feel like it is just as simple as Jake Fromm made throws.
And Jake Fromm can make throws.
Yeah, which is so infuriating because he didn't do it in like any other game. But and we know, especially since his freshman and sophomore seasons, he can make those throws.
Right.
And I think that it was a matter of just getting the right guy open. There are some, in particular, moments that matter. You know, the catch by Lawrence Cager that wasn't really a catch, I would argue.
You can drop it wasn't a catch, but that's besides the point.
And then there's
Tyler, we don't blame the referees on this podcast. You know this.
We don't. Well, that's not the reason that they lost. The reason Florida lost is Sean Davis gave up a touchdown to Lawrence Cager.
Yeah.
And I can't blame the refs. We can't blame the refs for that, and we shouldn't. But I mean, I think the biggest weakness of this defense this year was the safety play. Mm-hmm. So I think that had a lot of factor into it, because this is my personal belief. When you look at Grantham's defense, is a blitz-heavy, pressure-based defense. And he's done a lot better these last couple of years of simplifying and not always sending the blitz and getting pressure from different angles. But the problem with that, in my opinion, is that if you're going to go that way, you have to have a secondary that is capable of backing you up because you're going to give up plays.
Right.
You got to be able to keep them in front of you. The quarterbacks, I feel very confident in being able to do that. Trading at Star, I don't think was the right decision.
Agreed.
I think it was a good. I think that he's a good player in my opinion. He just did not fit that role. And I think he's better as a safety. I think he's better as an outside corner. But handling those people inside and being a force in the run game wasn't really his strong point.
Right. And we saw that when we went away from that in the Orange Bowl.
Yes. Yeah. And then on top of that, I think that the safety play this year was the weakness of the defense in that Sean Davis and Brad Stewart and Jonathan Steiner and Jawan Taylor had their high moments for sure. Picks against Auburn. That's the big one I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
And that was I'm not being facetious. That was amazing. But they were a little athletically limited and they made mistakes. And that one, that's the razor's edge of college football. That one mistake, letting Lawrence Cager go for the touchdown, that cost Florida a chance at the SEC championship.
And it's the thing where, honestly, it's ultimately a show of respect for C.J. Henderson because we didn't talk much about C.J. Henderson this year, and that's because they didn't throw to him.
Yep.
You know, it's the same thing that happened with Tease Tabor his senior year. The reason that Quincy Wilson shot up the draft boards was because that was the year after Tease had his breakout. They didn't throw to Tease. They ended up throwing to Quincy, and Quincy had like 7 interceptions in one season. Like, it's a thing that happens. Like, granted, we had 2 NFL wide receiver or 2 NFL cornerbacks on that roster, but like, it's a thing where they targeted and exposed all of the other mistakes that the young players made simply because they respected our potential first round draft pick corner. You know?
Yeah.
So, very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah.
How about how about for next year? What are we talking about for next year? For replacing on the defensive line, we talked about Jabari Zuniga, talked about Jonathan Grenard, David Reese. We got to replace those guys. How are we looking at for next season to replace? I want to start off by talking about how Zachary Carter had a great season this year. He filled in excellently when asked, and he is going to be one of those leaders on the defensive line, playing defensive end. He had 31 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, and 4.5 sacks in all 13 games this year. And he's going to go into next year as one of our most important players. After that, though, I mean, we're looking at Andrew Chatfield, who got some touches this season, and then maybe Chris Boggo is going to be a true sophomore, and by touches I mean plays. It's going to be interesting there at defensive end to replace a guy like Jabari Zuniga.
That's my biggest concern. Concerns. My biggest question.
And before you go in, I want to say we have a great track record of replacing this position. We went from Dante Fowler to Ja'Kai Polite to Jabari Zuniga. Those are 3 draft picks at defensive end. Zachary Carter seems to be coming from the same mold, seems to be getting into it. We just have to see if it'll happen.
Yeah, my thing with just the defense as a whole, but specifically defensive line, is that you're losing the leaders, you're losing the seniors in Zach Carter and Jabari Zuniga and Jonathan Bernard. Zach Carter will still be there, but outside of that, it's kind of nondescript, and that can be a good thing. That could just be the situation. Florida typically does replace well at that position. And on the defensive line and at the linebackers in particular. Mullen, for his credit, we talked about it earlier, has been, recruiting well to the defensive line and the linebacker position.
Always be recruiting.
It has been a point. It has been a point of emphasis for him because that is how you win games in the SEC. But it is a big question: is how quickly do those players come along? I think that from a pass rushing perspective, Mohamed Diabate at the linebacker position could fill in nicely for kind of a pseudo what Jonathan Grenard wants to do.
Okay.
I think he's got the speed. Is all
more of like a buck.
He is a freak athlete.
Yeah, that man can play.
I'm just interested to see because we're going to be learning a lot of new names.
Yeah, a lot of new names. Listen, I'm very excited, and I know we talked about this when we closed our recruiting episode. I'm so excited for Gervon Dexter. He's a 5-star. Dude, he looks like Chucky. We're bringing back the Chucky doll. He literally looks like Chucky. He should have the Chucky doll. He's going to be a force in the trenches, I believe. He's going to play right away, in my opinion, get some snaps. And listen, it may just be the Broward in me, but I am so excited to see Derek Wingo play. This is a guy who captained St. Thomas, high school football powerhouse St. Thomas Aquinas, was then a captain for his All-America team, the Adidas All-American, was a captain for that team, and was named to the All-America team, like a high school All-American, one of the 30 best players in the country. I think he's going to grow and develop to be that David Reese type. He's going to be an every single down back. He's going to be respected in the locker room. And I think in 3 seasons, we're going to be talking about should Derek Wingo declare for the draft. I'm being 100% serious. I feel like he's cut from that cloth. We built different down there in Broward County. He got that thing too. But
slow down.
Listen, he got that thing, but I keep that thing on me too. And I'm not afraid. He's got it. I feel like he's got that leadership. He's got that thing. What?
You're speaking in tongues. All right, slow down.
It's a Broward thing. You know what I mean?
Slow down. All right.
Slow down. All right. No, but I seriously think that way. I'm very excited at the linebacker position. James Houston and Ventrell Miller, I think they're going to do fine.
It's just a matter of the stars aren't there anymore, but we're going to learn new stars.
The vocal leaders, because you could argue that the person we expect to be the leader next season is Marco Wilson, but I don't know about you, but Marco Wilson's not a talker. He's gonna let his play do the talking, which I respect.
I actually think that Kyer Elam can step up in the secondary.
Kyer Elam is giving me. It's awfully similar to Chauncey Gardner-Johnson going into his second season. It's giving me shades of Chauncey going into second season. He may be the more vocal one. He may be the one that's a little flashier and kind of fires his defense up. But he'll back it up. I really think so. I really think that's going to be the case. Real quickly,
gotta give a shout out to special teams.
Gotta give a shout out to our boys
about on the kicking end because we got Evan McPherson.
Who's kicking
the GOAT.
Who's kicking Gatorade caps, doing the Gatorade cap challenge from the floor of the practice facility, like it's nothing.
Rodrigo Blankenship could never.
Yeah. And then I just
punting. We've got to replace Tommy Townsend.
Can we just have one moment of silence for the Townsend family?
Several.
Not being a part of our life for the first time in 8 years. All right, moment of silence observed. We are all Townsend family members. Yeah. Jeremy Crawshaw, that's our guy, Tyler.
He's an Australian.
He's an Aussie. That's our guy. My friend.
LSU has an Australian punter, and they just won a national championship. So.
Coincidence?
I'm not saying. I'm just saying.
I'm not saying natty, but I'm saying natty. What if I love how this is the first time I've invoked the natty, and we're talking about our Australian punter.
That's the key.
That's the key. You never know, right?
Yeah.
What was it? You? I think it was you who said, whose punter did you say? Clemson's punter. You said draft Clemson's punter. I've seen all I needed to see.
Yeah, it's after 2 punts inside the 5-yard line. I was like, draft him. I don't need to see any more of this game.
Man. So yeah, honorable mention.
I legitimately don't care anything else about him.
Listen, we're just saying we're not worried about special teams, and we'll probably be seeing either Kadarius Toney or Jacob Copeland for punt return and kickoff returns. So there is that on that. Tyler, what are things that you think that we need to be excited about for next season? Give me one thing you're excited about for next season.
Quarterback development. I'm gonna keep saying this and it's weird because it's that's kind of the same thing we were with Felipe Franks, but we didn't get to see that really. Unfortunately, for no fault of his own. But it's a matter of, I think that a year, whatever the quarterback is, a year in the offseason preparing as a starter, whoever the quarterback is, another year under Dan Mullen. Offensive balance, a new running game, hopefully, to supplement that. I think this offense can be much more balanced. Mm-hmm. And I'm excited to see if the quarterbacks can make that jump. Not quite like the Joe Burrow jump, because I'm pretty sure that's unprecedented.
That's never going to happen again.
But a jump, a major jump in the next year. Mm-hmm. And I think it's very possible.
I have to agree. I have 2 things to be excited about for next season. Number 1, the emergence of Jacob Copeland and Kyer Elam as players that opposing opponents will be targeting to eliminate. Jacob Copeland it's going to be his breaking out party, in my opinion.
I agree.
And same thing with Kyer Elam. I mentioned that I think he's giving me shades of Chauncey. I really hope it happens. I'm very excited for those two players. Number 2, I don't know about you, but I'm spending the first week in January in Miami. We're going to a natty.
Oh, is that so?
We're going to the national championship game, Tyler. You and I will be attendance.
Let's do it.
You and I will be attendance at Hard Rock Stadium.
The
Florida Gators will be one of the 2 teams playing in there.
Okay.
I'm excited for the Trevor Lawrence, Kyle Trask air raid battle. It's going to be a good time.
Let's hear who do you think we're going to play in the semi? Play Ohio State. We've never lost to them.
I think the Gators will enter the playoff. Listen, I was listening to PAPN, and Godfrey asked Gator GOAT Richard Johnson a question, and he says, I'm going to give you a January answer. And I said, wonderful. This is a January answer, Tyler.
Yeah.
I'm going to have Clemson coming out of the ACC. I'm going to have Ohio State coming out of the Big Ten. Florida,
really breaking ground here.
Florida coming out of the SEC. And the 4th spot is going to...
Just pick your Sooners. Get it over with.
I don't know if it's my Sooners.
The Iowa State Cyclones.
Iowa State. This is the year Les Miles figures it out.
Stop it.
Tyler, I can't give you an answer, man. I don't know.
It's fine. I was just messing around.
I know. But the point is,
the ceiling is really high for this team.
The ceiling is the roof, in the words of the great Michael Jordan. The ceiling is the roof. No, but seriously, the ceiling's high. I'm very excited. I think there's a realistic opportunity.
is the number 1 returning quarterback in the SEC.
Hands down.
Get Kellen Mond out of my face.
Get Kellen Mond out of my face.
He had one good game that they lost.
Yeah, they did. He won me my fantasy.
Kellen Mond is a good player. I'm not saying he is the second best returning quarterback in the SEC.
Yeah.
But everybody gets Kellen Mond this, Kellen Mond that with the heights, and I'm he had one really good primetime game in which they lost.
Listen, we got to talk about schedules later on, but that will be next week in our way too early top 25. Realistically, I think Florida has a chance. I think for sure we're making it to Atlanta. So I'll see you there first week in December.
Absolutely.
I'll see you there. Tyler, flipping the script, what do we have to be concerned about for next year?
I am concerned about safety play.
Hey, that's what I was going to say.
And it really just a matter of, we still have Sean Davis. I believe Brad Stewart is still on the team. I forget if Donovan Steiner and Jawan Taylor have graduated, but I believe Brad Stewart will still be there.
Jawan Taylor is graduating. Brad Stewart will be a senior.
Okay. We have some very talented freshmen coming in that could get really high playing time right away. But especially it comes to Georgia. The Georgia Bulldogs are breaking in a new aggressive passing game offensive coordinator in Todd Monken. They're bringing in Jamie Newman at the quarterback position from Wake Forest, who is a good player.
Darn good player.
Don't know his ceiling at a different school under a different system. Mm-hmm. We won't know. And I am worried that is the one game I can kind of circle on the calendar that I am worried about the ability of the safeties to really keep it all in front of them. Mm-hmm. Because as we've discussed, Todd Grantham defenses have struggled against NFL caliber quarterbacks. You don't face that many on the schedule.
Right.
Just generally. You only, even this year, we only face 2. Mm-hmm. And the big one really that could be on there, depending on how it works out at Georgia, is Jamie Newman. Because that's my one. I'm very excited for the season because I think the ceiling is very high. Florida, in my opinion, is the favorite to win the East. Mm-hmm. But I'm not. Georgia's not a distant second place. Mm-hmm.
For me, it's the safeties. For me, it's the safeties combined with who's going to play star, who's going to play that nickel safety in there. Amari Burney seems to be the one that was getting a lot of snaps during Orange Bowl practices. But, we could throw in Chester Kimbrough. We could throw in Trey Dean. We could throw Sean Davis in there maybe. Like, it's going to be a rotating door. I really want someone to establish themselves as that position, like Chauncey did when his last 2 seasons with us. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be very interesting. I hope that we can figure out that side. It's very strange to be worried about the defensive backs.
I'm not used to this.
I'm not used to this, and I don't like it. I really don't like this feeling.
Yeah, but I'm also like I love the ability to just not worry about the quarterback position.
Right.
To be able to say that Florida has the best returning quarterback in the SEC.
Very true. Hasn't happened since Tebow.
If Kyle Trask isn't the starter, you at least feel confident that Emory Jones is up there.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. All right, Tyler, I think this next question is our last one. Biggest questions you got going forward?
Well, my biggest questions really is how does this team avoid the third-year drop-off?
Okay.
Because most Florida coaches specifically, but most coaches in college football, when they get to a new place, the third year is the drop-off year. Mm-hmm. It was like that with Muschamp. It was like that with McElwain. It was like that with Urban Meyer. And it's hard to say. Tebow won a Heisman in 2007.
Right.
But it was technically a drop-off in win total. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that that is the year that their transition class, which is typically a coach's weakest recruiting class, because they have the least time to get prepared for it, especially now in today's age of the early signing period.
Yeah.
That is when those are the primary guys now.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes that kind of allows for some drop-off. In Florida's situation, you had a lot of McElwain recruits that bought in the seniors and the high-level players and then supplemented it with really good Mullen recruits. And now you're entering into an era where it's mostly Mullen recruits.
Mm-hmm.
And typically with most coaches, that is the drop-off. Now, it's avoidable. Nick Saban won a national championship in his third year at Alabama. Kirby Smart got to the SEC championship again his third year at Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
It's very possible to avoid this because I think that's the biggest thing is that Florida is returning so many of its good players that my biggest question is that the way and how do we avoid a third-year drop-off with just because we have an easier schedule. The East is relatively open. And that's really the big two things. Mm-hmm. And I've said for a long time that I felt that the 2020 Gator team, the team might not be as good as the 2019 team, but the schedule is easier.
Yeah, and that's an advantage that we have coming up this season. We don't have to play a 4-game stretch that includes LSU on the road, Georgia at home, a trap game with South Carolina, and Auburn at home. I mean, Georgia and Jacksonville, and Auburn at home. You know what I mean? That was a tough 4-game stretch.
One of those games was at home.
One of those games was at home, and we played an ugly, dirty, rainy, sloppy game on the road against South Carolina. So I understand that for you. For me, my biggest question going forward next year is, can we flipping the opposite of what you said, can we take advantage of this staff and the continuity that we have here at UF before we have coordinators and assistants and everyone outside of Mullen taking off? I truly believe this is Grantham's last year as coordinator. Not by his own will, not by Mullen's own will. I think he's going to get somewhere else. Someone's going to either drop a bag or someone is going to give him a head coaching gig somewhere. I think that he will be in that conversation, and he should take it. He should. Can we take advantage of that consistency? Can we take advantage of having those coaches not leave, and something that doesn't happen as often? You know. So that's my question going forward. The trajectory of this team, Tyler, for me. I mean, I did talk a lot about the Natty, but I think the primary goal here, the expectation, is Atlanta.
Yeah.
And I think relative to other fan bases, we have, let me say this for real quick, we are not a patient fan base. Relative to other programs, there is more patience because we are coming out of this era of McElwain with inept offenses. Muschamp.
We were coming out of a bad place.
We were coming out of a bad place, and we understand 10 wins first year, 11 wins, like Mullen said, one play away from making it to Atlanta. if the next year we make it to Atlanta, whether we beat whoever comes out of the West or not, it's going to be a successful season. Now, that may just be coming from you and I, who are level-headed Gator fans who study tape and who watch things and understand how college football is a journey. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. I think it would be successful. Can we take advantage? I think that the trajectory of us is making it to Atlanta, and hopefully, I mean, if we win the SEC title, we're going to the playoff. And at that point, it's a one game. Mullen's going to have 2-3 weeks to prepare. Players are going to get healthy. I trust Mullen offensively scheming against anyone in the country.
Yeah, and we'll just need to see how the new players that fill into their roles, how they fill in.
Yeah, and if those players that we expect to have breakouts are going to have breakouts.
Yeah, and I think that this is. I would have thought that last year was Florida's year to win the SEC because I didn't really. I thought that this last season was the year the team was constructed in a way to lead to that. Mm-hmm. But looking at the landscape now, I feel like this is Florida's year because they've got the best returning quarterback. I've said it like 5 times. So I don't need to keep saying it. But Georgia is in a state of they could be really good with their new stuff, but they're in a state of uncertainty.
Right.
With that, they're gambling. Mm-hmm. It's a pretty high stake. It's not the highest stakes gamble, but it's a gamble.
Right.
LSU's losing everything. Mm-hmm. Alabama is replacing Tua.
Future Miami Dolphin quarterback Tua.
All right, yeah, speaking it into existence.
Thank you.
And Auburn is losing most of their defensive line, which is a large part of their success. I mean, you could argue yourself that this is A&M's chance, but I'm not going there.
If we have the schedule argument.
But I feel that Florida has a chance not only to make it to Atlanta, but they've got a good shot to beat any of those teams that come out. Mm-hmm. So this is I'm excited because everything in Mullen's tenure has looked up, and I thought that we were going to have to brace for a down year, and I'm feeling confident in going up.
I am as well. I do feel it as well.
So
all right,
good
Tyler,
season. Looking toward to another one.
Good season. Looking forward to another one. We love our Gators. I think that's what we're going to say about that. We love our Gators in all kinds of weather. Gators. In all kinds of weather, my friends.
Yeah.
That's it on our Gators review. Tyler, before we finish with our patented flagship tweets we've shared, if you ever were to have a bag of, say, small, medium, or large size, where would you want to place and put that bag? Where do you think would be a safe place for it?
You know what I would do? I would put it up into the most compact ball it could be. I would toss it over at the email account sidelinejudgment@gmail.com and yell, Kobe!
That's right.
And
subject line, Kobe. We will understand you, I promise.
Yeah, that's what I would do.
Perfect. It'd be sidelinejudgment@gmail.com, right, Tyler?
Absolutely.
We'll take care of your bags.
Subject line, Kobe.
Don't you worry. We'll take care of your bags.
You could also do for Kobe if you want, but Kobe is acceptable.
100%. Always acceptable. Tyler, you know what time it is. It's time for tweets.
It's that time, baby.
What's your favorite tweet that I shared with you this week?
Well, there's a lot of good ones. Mm-hmm. And I think that this is a recent one. We've been talking a lot of quarterbacks. It's a very recent one you sent me. It is a response to a tweet by Mike Farrell, Rivals Mike, by Florida grad Ben Murphy, saying this is laughable. It is a list of the top 10 returning quarterbacks in college football. So here's the list.
Give it to me.
You know, should I go from the bottom up or up down?
You should go from 1 to 10.
Okay. All right. Number 1, Trevor Lawrence, Clemson.
Obviously.
Number 2, Justin Fields, Ohio State.
Okay, yes, obviously.
Number 3, Sam Howell, North Carolina.
You know I'm in the camp. You know I have my conductor hat. I'm choo-chooing on the bandwagon.
Sam Howell should be on this list.
Agreed.
But he should not be number 3.
Well, I'm going to pull up the list so I can see it with you. Okay, I got it right here.
Yeah. Number 4, Sam Ehlinger, Texas.
No, not 4.
No.
Here's my thing. I like Sam Howell above him. I don't like Sam Howell at 3 or Sam Ehlinger at 4.
Yeah. Number 5, Tanner Morgan at Minnesota.
Who? Drake?
Who?
Drake?
What is this, Tanner Morgan?
No.
As opposed to Whiter Morgan? Number 6, Jamie Newman, Georgia. Now, I'm not saying that Jamie Newman is a bad player because I think he's a very good player. But if Jamie Newman was still at Wake Forest this next season,
He wouldn't be on this list.
he would not be on this list.
No, he wouldn't. It's a Georgia plug.
All right. And number 7, the criminally underrated Brock Purdy at Iowa State.
Should be ranked number 3. Let's be real.
Yep, absolutely. I love you, man.
Got you. I love you.
Get me.
I understand you.
Number 8, Kellen Mond, Texas A&M.
Here's my thing. It's the same thing that I have with Kirk Cousins. When is it ever going to get better? That's my thing. When is it ever going to improve? We talk about, but he could just. There's a certain point where I'm out of time for if he could just.
This is who he is.
This is who he is.
Yeah. And then number 9, De'Aaron King, Miami.
I'm going to jump out of my window.
See, it's hard to, because De'Aaron King was if De'Aaron King was still at Houston, this would not be, he would not be up here.
De'Aaron King isn't even the best quarterback in his state.
Yeah, and then number 10, Kyle Trask at Florida.
Criminally underrated.
Very criminally underrated.
Felony level of underratedness.
Kyle Trask is better than Tanner Morgan, Jamie Newman, Kellen Mond, and De'Aaron King, at least.
And Sam Ehlinger, in my opinion.
Yeah, I could hear a debate on that.
Yep.
I would put him above Sam Ehlinger, but I'm unabashedly.
If we're rearranging this list,
Tanner Morgan, Jamie Newman, Kellen Mond, and De'Aaron King.
If we're rearranging this list, I think you and I, top 3, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Field, Brock Purdy.
Absolutely.
Number 4 for me, I'm putting Sam Howell.
I can see it. I'm not going to argue that.
Number 5, I'm putting Trask.
Yep.
Number 6, I'll probably put...
I'd put Ehlinger.
I'd put Ehlinger there. 7, Kellen Mond.
8 is the trio of quarterbacks at Boise State. 9 is whatever quarterback is going to be at Washington State under Nick Rolovich.
Oh, no, under Nick Rolovich. Yeah, you're right.
And then 10 is the Mississippi State quarterback, whoever it is, because...
Yeah. Whoever ends up being it.
Yeah. Because numbers, baby.
Numbers, baby. Stats over tape. You know what it is. Never. By the way, never stats over tape.
Never stats over tape.
Just want to say that.
Yeah. So that was a fun exercise.
That's a way to do it. All right. For me, Tyler, my favorite tweet that you shared with me, I think I'm gonna have to go with an earlier one. It's from Saturday's Senior Bowl. It is a video from the NFL Network official Twitter account.
Oh yeah.
Our boy LaMichael Pirine opening up the scoring for the South squad. Catches a screen pass out of the backfield, breaks one-handed, breaks 2 tackles, fights his way past the first down, and then stumbles his way into the end zone for the touchdown. You just love to see it.
In his hometown
of Mobile, Alabama. And then honorable mention, it's a tweet I sent you, but it follows up. It's by @TBlack, and it's the Marcus Spears with his glasses down, looking at the camera,
yep.
And it says Pirine every time he sees a hole actually opening up.
Absolutely.
My gosh!
Just a last little shout out. This is not sports related at all.
No, it's
not.
But a
tweet that I sent you, by Uber Eats of all things. It's a promoted tweet. Mm-hmm. It says, order at McDonald's for the award show and don't miss a single acceptance speech. #McDelivery. That's not an important part of this. No. The important part is in the video. It's it's an ad, and it's like a comedic, like 6 little second thing of this girl eating a chicken nugget, and like there's lights flashing like she's on the red carpet because it's award show season. Mm-hmm. We know this girl.
Oh, we know this girl very well.
Rocky Wallace.
Raquel Wallace, a.k.a. Rocky, UF School of Theater and Dance legend.
Get your bag.
Get the bag. One time for Rocky. We love to see our friends succeed. We support and we stand on this podcast.
Absolutely.
Tyler,
live your dreams.
Can I pass a motion?
Yes.
Can we induct this tweet into the Sideline Judgment Tweets We Shared Hall of Fame?
Absolutely.
Excellent. Can I get a second?
Inducted. I second.
Excellent. Welcome
Motion passes.
To the Sideline Judgment Tweets We Shared Hall of Fame, Raquel, a.k.a. Rocky Wallace. Congratulations. Chase the bag. We hope to see so many great things from her and all of our other actor friends that are being successful. We love to see it. We stand. when you eat, we all eat. The whole fam eats. So love to see it. Literally, in this case, chicken nuggets. So
very appropriate.
Very appropriate. Tyler, this was a mega Gators episode, clocking in at an hour and a half, just the way we like it. Tyler, this episode started off very somber, very sad, but this episode ends very happy, celebrating the success of a friend of ours, talking about the thing that we love and we share, the Florida Gators, our Florida Gators, and college football. Next week, Tyler, don't think you're getting rid of me. We're coming back.
Oh, no.
It's the off season, but we are coming back. We are
talking.
Oh,
heck yeah.
We are talking the Miss You Already Top 25 episode, where we are going to come up with our own way too early top 25s for the 2020 season, and just get to talking about what we're excited about next year, in terms of teams that aren't the Florida Gators. There will be some Gator talk, but not as much as this entire episode. Tyler, is there anything else that you want to say before we sign off?
No, just it's good. It's good to talk about, go in depth, go in the weeds, and I'm even more excited for Florida season next year.
Oh yeah. This pumped me.
Like this got me hyped.
This got me hyped. Oh, for sure.
I might go rewatch every single offensive snap again. No, I won't do that. I ain't got.
Did you put it together yourself? Send it to me. Text me. We'll talk after.
We'll talk about it.
We'll talk. Don't forget to hug your loved ones. Don't forget to tell the people in your life that you love them, and make sure that you approach every day with Mamba mentality, just like we will, and just like Kobe and Gigi and the 7 other victims would have. With all of that being said, this has been yet another episode of Sideline Judgment. My name is Sergio.
My name is Tyler.
We are not biased, but rest in peace to the Bryants and to the victims of the tragedy.
Yep. Kobe.